Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. My precious. Come on. Thanks, Steve. He loves this book. Hey everyone, I'm Alex. Thanks for clicking, and welcome to this lesson on nature vocabulary with Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien is one of the greatest, most important, most revered, not just fantasy novels, but novels period in the English language. It is wonderful, beautiful, full of lush landscapes and scenery, and the reason I've decided to focus on nature vocabulary for you guys is even if you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, this video is still useful for you because I'm going to give you some vocab that is common, but also not so common, and all of it is in this book. Now, if you like this book that I have in my hand and you want to know, Alex, where can I get one? You can get either the physical copy or the ebook version at the Amazon link that is attached to this video. Or another option is if you want to listen to the audiobook version of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. There's also two more books, The Two Towers and The Return of the King. If you want any one of those books, you can get the audiobook version by checking out the link to Audible that is also attached to this video. You can get the book for free by clicking at the link, and you will also sign up for a free 30-day trial. So if you like the book, if you like the audio quality, and which I think you will, because the narrator who does Lord of the Rings, Rob Inglis is his name. He's wonderful. I have the book on my own phone. I've listened to it. He does like the songs that are in the story. He does the poems, and he has this deep baritone voice when he reads the book, which is just beautiful. It makes you feel like your grandfather is reading the book to you. So the audiobook is totally excellent. Check it out if you want at the Audible link that is attached to this video. I think that's all I wanted to say before we got into things. So I'm going to put this down far away from Steve over here. Okay. I'm watching you. And we're going to talk about some of the flora and the fauna of the Lord of the Rings series. And this vocabulary is found throughout the entire series. Okay. So what I wanted to do really with this video and what I want to do for you guys is to make you feel comfortable in the world of Middle-earth, because there is a ton of traveling. There are a ton of natural physical features that are described in the book. It's very beautiful. It's very poetic. And if you like nature, this is the book for you. If you like fantasy and action and magic and adventure, this is definitely the book for you. So I thought I would start with some of the wetter parts of the geography in Middle-earth, which is the fictional fantasy land that Lord of the Rings takes place in. So we'll start very simple, a word you might already know, and that is a river. Now, a river is a large channel of water that flows into a sea. So around Montreal, you have the St. Lawrence River. The Nile is a river. The Amazon is a river. So these are long channels of water that flow into the sea. And there's actually some debate over whether the Nile or the Amazon is the longest river in the world, depending on how you choose to measure them. So those of you in Brazil probably see it one way. Those of you in Egypt might see it another way. They're both rivers, though. That's the most important thing today. Next, a stream. Think of a stream as a smaller, more narrow river, okay? So they talk about the characters walking past streams, a small, narrow river. So this is how it would look like on a map, right? You have the blue, You have the thin lines representing the water flowing, either a river or a stream. Next, bank. Not the bank where you get your money, but a riverbank, okay? So a bank is a piece of land that slopes into a river or a lake. So here's a picture of a riverbank. Think of, the land here. It slopes down and you have the water here. So this is called the riverbank. In Lord of the Rings, the characters sometimes walk by the riverbank, or they rest near the riverbank when they are traveling to deliver the ring. Okay, next, a slope. So here I use the verb slope, land that slopes, goes down, and a slope, the noun, is basically anything that rises or falls, a surface that rises or falls. So we have a rising or falling surface. So this is a slope right here. All right, so you can have a steep slope or a gradual slope. So steep, it goes up very, very, steep. The angle is very steep, like this, like almost 90 degrees. Or you have a more gradual slope, maybe 20 degrees if you're into geometry, okay? So they talk about slopes and riverbanks and streams. And now, this part is tough. So we talk about fens, marshes, bogs, and mires. What I'm going to do is start with the word mire first, because a mire is basically the word that describes the category of these three things on top of it. So a mire is a stretch of swampy or boggy ground. Now, to know what a mire is and know what swampy or boggy means, you need to know what a marsh or a bog is. Basically, this refers to a stretch of wet land, okay? This is a type of wetland. So let's start with fen and marsh. Fen is a frequently flooded area. A marsh, similar to a fen, is an area of low land that is flooded in wet seasons. Now, a fen, the difference between a fen and a marsh, a fen is typically flooded almost the entire year, okay? Whereas a marsh gets flooded during specific times of the year. So here you have an example of a marsh. Think of, the land is low. It's the wet season, so the water comes up above the land, and you can grow plant life. Both of them can support plant life and grasses. So fens and swamps can support plant life and grass. The difference between them and a bog, now a bog, wet, muddy ground that can't support a lot of weight. The soil, the earth is very poor in a bog. It has what's called peat growing on top of it. Peat, think of this little clump of green as peat, that really soft, almost furry grass. Okay, that's called peat. So a bog is basically just a big chunk of peat that if you step on it, it can't support your weight. Now the difference between a bog, a marsh, and a fen. So fens and marshes we'll put together. They can support grass, they can support plant life. A bog can't really grow like reeds and grasses, okay? All it has is the peat, which is this really furry, soft stuff, but it can't grow like green plants that pop up like this, okay? So, marshes, bogs, fens, they are all examples of mires, which are stretches of this wetland, okay? Is that kind of clear? Pretty good? Okay, so before we go on, let's just do some pronunciation of this kind of water-based vocabulary, these water landmarks and landscapes. First, river. Not really landscapes, I'll say geographical features. That's a better term for it. So I'll repeat one more time. River, stream, bank, slope, fen, marsh, bog, mire. Excellent. One more thing I will add to this. There are actually 4 types of mires. Bogs, marshes, and fens are 3 of them. The other one that is not here is a swamp. The only thing you need to know about a swamp that is different than a marsh, a bog, or a fen is that it can also support tree life. So trees can grow in a swamp. They can't grow in a marsh, a bog, or a fen. All right, now let's talk about some mountains and cliffs and hills and trees. Let's get into the green stuff now. So we did the blue stuff. Let's do the green stuff. Again, Steve, he's faster than he looks. Okay. Now, let's look at the green stuff that I was talking about. So these are geographical features such as hills and mountains. You might know what a mountain is. You might know what a hill is. Did you know there's something even smaller than a hill called a knoll? Knoll. The K is silent. So if you ever go to a park, for example, and you see a piece of land, like the grass, it goes up a bit, goes down, and it's not really a hill, it's called a knoll, okay? So think of it in terms of size, getting bigger. Knoll, hill, mountain, okay? So let's just repeat those after me one more time. Knoll, hill, mountain. Good. All right, and another important part of Lord of the Rings is roots, okay? So roots are basically these things under the ground that help, hold a tree or hold a plant or hold grass to the earth, that connect it to the earth, okay? So these are, repeat after me, roots. Good. Okay, next we have valley. So a valley is a low area of land between hills or mountains. So think of this area here. This would be a valley. So the area between 2 hills or between 2 mountains is the valley. It's the lower part that's between hills and mountains. And we'll learn a little more about valleys a little later in this board. Next, turf. So when you see soccer games or football games, typically they are playing on turf or grass. Sometimes it's artificial, like not natural. So turf is basically the grassy layer and the surface of the earth that is held by roots. So you can go to almost any garden shop and you can buy turf. So this grassy part that is held by roots. Remember, roots go down into the earth, and that's simply the turf. It's the top green layer of grass. It's basically grass, okay? Think of it as that, but it's held down to the earth by roots. So you can buy turf if you want to have a nice green lawn in front of your house. Adele. So not Adele the singer, but Dell, not the computer either. Adele, I'm out of jokes for Adele. Adele is basically a small valley. Okay, so remember, a valley is between hills or mountains. It's the low land. This is a smaller valley that is usually among trees. So usually you have trees around a dell. It's a small valley with trees surrounding it, okay? Or trees in the middle of it. All right, bush. So think of a bush as a short tree. I drew a little picture here. Steve, you see that? Yep. All right, so it's a short tree. You don't see you don't have the trunk of the tree. This is called the trunk. It's very low to the ground. It's a short tree. So it's a clump of shrubs, or basically a short tree. Think of a short tree, okay? Now, a hedge, think of many bushes together. If you have many bushes together, you have a hedge, because this is a boundary, okay, or a frontier that is formed by closely growing bushes. So if you have a lot of bushes together, they make a hedge, Okay, so one small tree is a bush. Many small trees, like many bushes, make a hedge. Some people, who live in suburban areas will have hedges in their backyard or around their house so that the neighbors can't see them for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so next we have a thicket. Okay, now so much green stuff. We have bushes are small trees. Hedges are rows of bushes. A thicket is a dense or closely packed group of bushes or trees. So I tried drawing a little picture for you with trees that are close together and bushes. And if you try walking through, think of the word thick, which is in the word itself. So think of trees and bushes being very close together, and when you walk through them, you hear the branches scratching against you. A couple of times in the book, more than a couple, many times in the book, you will hear or you will read someone saying, they went into the thicket, or the narrator will say, they cut through the thicket. So they have to chop the branches from the trees or the bushes to make progress in the forest, for example. Okay, so that is a thicket. Brambles. Brambles are a pain in the butt. They are basically sharp, prickly, pointy vines. Okay, so prickly vines. For example, blackberry bushes have brambles. I tried drawing, you see the points, the sharp points. Those are basically the prickles, the prickly part of the vine. And those are called brambles. So, the brambles might get stuck to your clothes because they're pointy and they're sharp. So I hate brambles. If you're walking in the forest, they try getting caught against your pants and stuff. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Last of all, vale. This one is easy because you think, valley, vale, valley, vale. Vale is just a synonym, another word for valley. However, sometimes, specifically in fantasy books, but in real life as well, vale is used in place names instead of valley. And it's also a very poetic word. So you often hear the word vale used in poetry instead of the word valley. It just sounds more poetic, I guess. Valley, vale. The valley of, the vale of. To me, they're both nice words, but I guess poets prefer vale for some reason. Okay, we got a few more, so come on with me. We're almost at Mount Doom. Last time. Come on, Steve. Okay. Next, we have cliffs. So what is a cliff? So a cliff is a steep rock face. So here's the steep. Remember the word steep, it has a very sharp angle up. Here's 90 degrees. So a steep rock face, usually near the edge of the sea. So this is a cliff. So you hear about, TV shows and movies ending on a cliffhanger. So you want to know what happens next. Think of a person hanging onto a cliff. And if the movie or the show stops there, oh no, the end? What's going to happen next? I have to watch next week. So you hang on a cliff. So this is a cliff. Eaves. So eaves in our world, they are overhanging edges of a roof. I drew a little picture here. If you have a house, this is the roof. The eaves are these little pieces that hang over the roof. Maybe they're not so long. Some of them can be very short. You can have short eaves. But basically any part of the roof that hangs over the side of the house like this is called an eave. In Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien uses it to talk about the eaves of the forest. So think of standing outside a very thick, dense forest, and you see the leaves and the branches coming off the sides of the forest. He calls those the eaves of the forest or the eaves of the trees. Okay? Next, hollow. A hollow is just a very beautiful, nice way of saying a hole or a depression. So in a tree, for example, sometimes you have little holes or depressions. That could be considered a hollow. Hollows can be bigger, like a cave technically could be considered a hollow. So any little hole that you can kind of like climb into, or maybe, birds live in, that's a hollow. And finally, we have fog and mist. Now, I was trying to figure out the difference between these two for you guys because, quite honestly, I didn't really know either. But the only difference that I was able to find is how far you can see, so the level of visibility. Now, both of them, you think of fog, think of like a low-hanging cloud, okay? It's not actually what it is, but both fog and mist are caused by small drops of water in the air, humidity in the air. They can also be formed by little like ice crystals. The difference, according to the UK, by law, fog, if the visibility is 1 kilometer or less in a plane, if you're in a plane and you're in the middle of one of these phenomena, then you are in fog. Or if the visibility is 100 meters or less when you're driving, you are in fog. If it's more than 1 kilometer when you're in a plane, or more than 100 meters when you're driving, it's called mist. That's what the internet told me, guys. So now I'm passing that knowledge on to you. All right? So fog and mist. I always assumed that mist had more like water in it, I guess. And I think it still does, because if you go on, for example, to Niagara Falls, and you see all of the mist coming off the water when the waterfalls hit the bottom, that's still mist. But I guess the UK laws say something different. Oh well. Okay, so before we finish, just repeat after me. Cliff, eaves, hollow, fog, mist, right? And fog and mist, it's hard to see, right? Okay, so that's it for today, guys. Steve, you excited? Yeah? Do you want to read Lord of the Rings right after this? Huh, you do? Okay. Let me tell you how you can get that book. So, as I mentioned at the start of this video, if you want a copy of The Lord of the Rings, either The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, or The Return of the King, you can get a physical copy or an ebook copy at the Amazon link attached to this video. If you want to get the audiobook version, which is narrated by the very talented Rob Inglis, you can do so by clicking the Audible link attached to this video. And you will get the Lord of the Rings audiobook for free by clicking that link and signing up for the free 30-day trial. All right. If you feel comfortable now in the land of Middle-earth, I really recommend you check this book out. And maybe, even if you're not into Lord of the Rings, maybe you learned something today. And that's awesome. That's great. So if you want to test your understanding of everything we did today, though, check out the quiz on engvid.com. While you're there, please support us by donating or consider donating. And check me out on YouTube, where you can subscribe to my channel, click that bell, and also check me out on Facebook and Twitter, where I do a bunch of stuff and keep in touch with you guys. So till next time, thanks for clicking. One ring to rule them all.